Watch out!
I need my shoes.
Y'all gonna go to jail, bro. Y'all gonna go to jail. Y'all gonna go to jail.
I need my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
What's out of there?
She right here. Let's get her. They right here.
What's up, family? Real talk. Carnival Cruise just became ground zero for a massive brawl that went viral, and the footage is absolutely embarrassing. Black passengers fighting at the check-in line, bonnets, pajamas, as you guys can see in this first clip, fists flying everywhere, police trying to restore order while folks are snatching weaves out of heads and throwing punches over nothing. And the receipts show this isn't an isolated incident. This is happening over and over. And let me break this all the way down for you. These clips are wild, but they're showing us something deeper that we need to face head on, family. This isn't one crazy moment on one cruise ship. This is becoming regular. This is a pattern. You're seeing this happen repeatedly on these boats and nobody wants to talk about it. And look at what we're actually seeing in these videos. People in pajamas that check-in, bonnets, weaves getting pulled straight out of people's hair, fish flying, chaos at the most basic moment. And you're just trying to board a cruise ship. That's it. That's all that's happening. You're at the check-in line, and instead of handling it like regular human beings, you're throwing hands, you're screaming, you're creating a scene that makes everybody around you uncomfortable. And here's what really gets me. You got kids fighting too, kids, and parents standing around yelling, "There's my baby over there," while their own children are in the middle of the madness. Where's the parent? Where's the thought saying, "Stop, we're not doing this"? They just watching, just yelling, just letting it happen. And I know we're so indoctrinated into this social media age where we'd rather put out a phone than actually be the mature person when it comes to displaying emotional maturity and also de-escalating situations. But nowadays, individuals feel like they have to prove something and feel justified by getting served in a way in their mind, a form of justice by getting back in this case of fighting and having a brawl and hooting and hollering and things like that. So the average human being isn't brawling at a check-in line. Think about that for a second. You go to an airport, you go to a hotel, you go anywhere people gather and you don't see this. People handle themselves. They wait their turn, they move on. But this is different. This is beyond normal. This is people who don't know how to control themselves in public. And now here's the part that kills me. Who's actually keeping order and who's trying to restore peace? Police officers, right? Everybody creating the chaos happens to be a race of black. Everybody trying to stop the chaos, is the police officers. So if you think about what image that is saying in the world, and the police officers happen to be white, and the individuals hooting and hollering have to be black, and a lot of times just I don't really care for the race thing, but I'm using it in the form of this degenerate behavior. And a lot of people have been online and this made this whole thing trending of the concept of black fatigue is where I'm going with this. Not that it doesn't matter in regards of, in my eyes, it doesn't matter in regards of race, because at the end of the day, unacceptable behavior is unacceptable behavior, regardless of the race. But this displays the black fatigue conversation that I've been seeing across the media. And now this is actually what the world and why the world is seeing it this way and saying black fatigue. So you got people fighting, pulling hair, screaming, and acting completely out of control. And then you got law enforcement, the police, stepping in to handle something that should never have happened in the first place. And that's not a system problem. That's not oppression. That's people choosing to act a certain way in public and then other people having to clean it up. And this isn't about weakness or strength. Let me be clear on that. We're not talking about who's tough or who's soft. We're talking about self-control. We're talking about respect for public spaces. But then you wonder why individuals throw out statements like black fatigue, which now I can understand from the image that you have basically portrayed in this pattern of things being stereotyped to be justified as individuals saying I got black fatigue. And I'm not trying to make this, like I said, a race thing. But I'm saying when it comes to a certain demographic of individuals who have a pattern of behaving this way, in a lot of incidents, what does that create? A stereotype. There's no difference between from a criminal who continues to have a pattern of wearing a ski mask or blase this, blase that. Eventually, based on statistics and demographics playing a part in where the crime is happening mostly occurred to really see how we can be proactive in preventing that crime to happen more often, you look at all those factors from a common sense standpoint, just to handle the public safety standpoint and also keep things in order for all people, regardless of race. That's the important component. But some people would justify the ignorant behavior or justify in ignorance this behavior, this degenerate behavior, by continuing to use the Victim Olympics route of race. But now that I just mentioned that, because I feel like we're just having a bigger conversation, looking at it from aspects, but still holding on to the simple fact of self-control, we're talking about understanding that when you walk into a place, you share that space with other people. Common courtesy, which happens to be less of nowadays, just as common sense happen to be less of nowadays. But we got families, kids, folks just trying to take a vacation. You can't just lose your mind because something didn't go your way, and the average person handles conflict without throwing punches. The average person walks away and they say, you know what, this isn't worth it. I'm not going to embarrass myself, my family, or my community over some nonsense at a check-in line. But that's not what we're seeing here, and that's what we need to talk about. So with no further ado, I want to show you guys the second and last clip of this matter with this whole Carnival Cruise thing and what has been going viral and what has occurred. So there you have it. Now, here's where this gets uncomfortable. And I'm not going to soften it because the truth doesn't need to be solved. Where are the parents who raised these kids that think this is acceptable? And that's the real question we need to be asking. You can't go on a cruise ship and pull someone's weave out of their head, throw punches, and fight at a check-in line unless somebody didn't teach you any better. And that somebody is your parent, and that's on people who raised you. For stop, no excuses. And see, that's what gets me the most, right? Because you got a parent standing there. You seen an individual, you seen a man holding a child in his arms in the midst of this video as I'm rewinding to show you on the screen while this chaos is happening right here. So it's only people who raised you, full stop, no excuses. Parents standing there in the video watching their child throw hands, holding a child, and they're not stopping it. They're not pulling them aside and saying, this is not what you do. This is not how we handle ourselves. They're just letting it happen. Or worse, they're yelling about the situation instead of taking responsibility for their own kids' behavior. You can't blame the system when your own child is the one acting out of control and then they get held accountable when it comes to the court of law. And you can't talk about oppression and injustice when your family is the one creating chaos at a family vacation. It just doesn't add up. That doesn't make sense. Your child made a choice. Your child threw that punch. Your child grabbed the person's hair and pulled. And that's not the system. That's not society failing you. That's your child doing what they were allowed to do. And we spend all day, every single day, talking about what everybody else is doing wrong. We talk about the government. We talk about, we make it a race thing, white folks, these folks, all different type of Asian, black, whatever. And we talk about the system and we talk about society not caring. But when it comes time to raise our own kids, regardless of race, when it comes down to this behavior and holding communities accountable, we're quiet. You don't want to look at that in the mirror. The excuses don't work anymore. And you get tired of hearing them. It's the system, it's society, it's the economy, it's what they did to us. No, your child threw a punch, and that's on you. Your child disrespected another person in public, that's on you. Your child embarrassed your family, your community on a cruise ship that everybody can see, and that's on you. And when you think about that, it's wild. I used to think people who didn't fight were weak. That's the honest truth. You grow up, some individuals grow up thinking that, right? If you didn't throw hands, if you didn't want to brawl with somebody, you were soft. You were less of a man. And that's how I was thinking back then. Then you get older and you start realizing what actually happens. And you realize something. Civilized people don't throw hands over nothing. Civilized people don't believe their whole identity depends on whether they fought somebody at a check-in line, because that's not strength. That's barbaric. And that's acting like you can't control your own instincts. And real strength is walking away. Real strength is controlling yourself even when you are angry. And real strength is understanding that fighting a stranger over a disagreement doesn't prove anything. It just proves you don't know how to handle yourself like an adult. So civilized people handle disagreements without violence, and that's the baseline. And that's what we're supposed to be teaching our kids. But instead, raising a generation, and happens to become more so of a generation with teen takeovers taking place. And you're seeing in Chicago in Juneteenth for the chaos and shots ringing out, and our current president again saying he would rather chip in and help restore public safety just like he did in DC. But you have Mayor Brandon Johnson, who wants to consider to say that it's not the individuals doing this type of chaos in Chicago justifying and enabling this behavior, which is being promoted and starting to spread nationwide, which isn't good for the next generation, regardless of race. So you're showing them, if you get angry, you fight. If someone disrespects you, you hit them. If you disagree, you throw hands. That's not a future. That's a problem. And it starts with parenting, and it starts with us deciding what we're going to accept from our own child and from our own community. And here's the part that gets me the most pushback. People come at me saying, you don't love your people. First of all, I love all people. You hate where you come from. You always turn on your own. But what I'm saying speaks the truth to behavior, regardless of race. See, the defense mechanism, and that's how people protect themselves from having to actually look at what's happening. But real love isn't pretending that everything's fine. Real love isn't making excuses for people who are destroying the peace. It's telling the truth even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because if you love somebody, you don't let them keep doing something that's destroying them. You don't stay quiet, you speak up. So I love all people, I love all communities, and definitely I do this line of content because having a child of my own and, wanting the best for the next generation is important, right? So this is embarrassing to the youth, next generation on a cruise ship acting like this. And I can't watch kids fighting while parents stand around doing nothing and pretend that's acceptable. I can't stay quiet about that. That's not love, that's cowardice. You want to complain all day about how you're treated, you want to talk about how the system is against you, how people disrespect you, how you don't get opportunities. You got all the energy in the world for that conversation, all the anger, all the words. But the moment somebody points out that maybe, just maybe, we need to take responsibility for how we show up, suddenly you're the bad guy. You want to protest, you want to march, you want to talk about injustice and unfairness, and that energy is there, family. It's real, but you won't step up in your own community, or at least lead by example. You won't be the solution. You won't raise your kids better. You won't teach them to control themselves. You want everybody else to change except yourself, and that's not consistent. That's not even real accountability, right? Let's think about this. Think about it like this. If you're out here complaining about the police, about how cops treat the community, the real conversation is, where are the people who said, I'm going to be the solution? Where are the folks who looked at the problem and say, you know what, I'm going to step in and be different? They're not there. They're not in these videos, at least, as we watching right here.
We are.
See? So you got the grandchild watching that. From the grandfather, who is the top of the family tree, displaying destructive behavior. But then in the same sentence, you'll be protesting the system for holding the grandfather accountable who you just seen got arrested while you're destroying the peace. And you're marching about injustice while you're creating chaos. It just doesn't add up. You can't ask for respect while you're not respecting yourself or each other in public. And the world is watching how we show up. And on these cruise ships, you're showing up in chaos. You're showing up out of control. And that's the image that's going around. That's what people are seeing. And no amount of marching changes that if we keep acting like this. Young people especially need to hear it, right? Because you got this twisted idea in your head about what manhood is. You think not fighting makes you weak. You think walking away from nonsense makes you soft. And it's really backwards because that's a lie somebody told you. And a real man controls himself and not let situations control him. And a real man doesn't need to throw hands as a check-in line to prove he's a man. So a real man raises his kids right. A real man walks away from drama instead of creating it. And a real man thinks about how his actions affect other people. And that's strength, that's real, but there's a remnant of us who got it right. And there's people in the community who said, I'm done with the drama and I'm done with that cycle. And that ain't me. And you choose peace, you choose to be better, you choose family and living different. And some individuals are stuck though. And they're caught up in the violence and chaos. And every single time you act like this in public, as we've seen, you're making it harder for the rest of individuals because it can become stereotypical. And you're creating the very stereotype you claim you're fighting against. So, this conversation right now isn't about blaming one group of people or making excuses for the other. I want to be straight with you about what needs to be happening moving forward. This is bigger than that. This is about standards. This is about deciding what we're willing to accept from ourselves and from each other as a community. And when you can't control your own behavior in public, you're showing the entire world something very specific. You're showing them that you can't be trusted. You're showing them that your instincts run you instead of running yourself. And that matters. And people see that and they remember that. And when you let your kids act without boundaries, act like they got no home training, you're not just embarrassing yourself in the moment. You're telling the world something about what you value. And you're telling them you don't care enough about your child's future to teach them right from wrong. And you're telling them that you're okay with your child being seen as out of control and dangerous. Now, civilized people understand something that we've forgotten. Civilized people don't tie their entire identity to whether they fought somebody. Civilized people don't even believe their manhood or their worth depends on throwing hands with a stranger over disrespect. That mindset is old, and the mindset is destroying stereotypical communities like this. So we act like pulling a gun or throwing punches because somebody looked at you wrong as strength, and it has been celebrated and glorified, but it's not strength. That's actually being a slave to your emotions. And that's letting every single thing control what you do. A civilized person is above that. And a civilized person has learned that there's another way, but we have to choose to do better individually. And choice is the key word here. Nobody's forcing anybody to act crazy at a cruise ship, and nobody made anybody throw hands here. That was a choice, and we can make different choices starting now and teach your kids how to do better and demand better from communities. Not ask for it, demand it. Because you got to stop accepting the behavior as normal because it's not, and you hold each other accountable instead of making excuses. For people you love, real love holds you to a standard. And peace and positivity aren't just nice words I say at the end of videos. That's the actual way forward. That's the only way you get out of this cycle. When you show up with chaos, you cost everybody. You cost your family, you cost your community, you cost yourself. And the ripple spreads out further than you think. And change starts with you. And change starts with how you raise your kids. And right now, you're making a decision to say, not me, not my family. We're done with the drama, the chaos, and choosing different. And this is real talk. Can't keep blaming everybody else, pointing fingers and making excuses. And the world is passing you by when you keep acting like this. So you don't look strong at a check-in line at a Carnival Cruise fighting. You just look out of control. Hold your community to a higher standard. Teach the youth, next generation, your kids to do better. Spread the peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate. Drop a comment. Tell me what you think about all of this. Subscribe and turn on your post notifications. On that note, family, peace.